Hi, today I've been invited to talk to you about some research on improving the interviewing of suspects, and in particular, what seems to be the most important skills. Now, in 2016, the United Nations Special Rapporteur on Torture and Other Inhumane or Degrading Treatments submitted his report recommending the production of a universal protocol, a worldwide document on interviewing to the UN Secretary General that was then adopted by the UN General Assembly. And when mentioning this universal protocol, the Special Rapporteur noted that, encouragingly, some states, some countries have moved away from accusatorial, manipulative, and confession-driven interviewing models with a view to increasing accurate and reliable information and minimizing the risks of unreliable information and miscarriages of justice. And he continued that the essence of an alternative information gathering model was first captured by the peace model of investigative interviewing adopted in 1992 in England and Wales. And investigative interviewing, he said, can provide positive guidance for the protocol. So what is the peace model? It stands for planning and preparation, engaging the interviewee in conversation, explaining to them their rights and so on. Only then seeking account, and I'm going to talk about the skills involved in that major phase. Before the interview ends, having a closure phase. And finally, once the interview is over, it should be video recorded. There is an opportunity to evaluate how well the interview went, how skilled it was, and the information gained. But is the peace model effective? There are many studies now on this. I'll just talk about a few. For example, in our study of a large sample of real-life interviews with people who may have been involved in committing crime, we examined whether interviewing in a way that's compatible with the peace model bore any relationship to the actual outcomes of these interviews. And this was the first study of the effectiveness of the peace model. And we found that better peace interviewing was associated with securing a greater number of comprehensive accounts, including exculpatory ones, as well as admissions, confessions. So which of the skills in this study were found to be the most effective? And of course, the account phase is the most important one, though they're all important. So the skills that were associated with the positive outcomes were encouraging the suspect to give an account, developing topics, using appropriate types of questioning, exploring the information received from the suspect, remaining open-minded, and demonstrating the skill of active listening. And as you can see here, 63% of the interviews rated as satisfactory or above for the skills in this account phase did obtain a comprehensive account or a full confession, whereas only 12% of those interviews rated as needs further training, not being good in these skills, did so. We've also examined how interviewers attempt to overcome suspects' initial denials of knowing about the alleged wrongdoing. And we examined the association between the extent to which the suspects moved or shifted in the interview from denying to providing relevant information and the interviewer's skills. And we found that the shifting from denying to providing relevant information most often occurred when certain skills were present, many of which are part of the peace model. Let's quickly have a look at them. There was the disclosing of information. We've done other work on how best to do that, and the answer is to do it piece by piece gradually. And then emphasizing contradictions, either within what the suspect has said or what the suspect has said compared with the information that the interviewer knows. Behaving in a way that encourages the account, gentle prods, keeping open-minded and keeping open questions, still being persistent, positively confronting, that's not meaning oppression, asking probing questions, providing an appropriate structure for the interview, regularly summarizing what the person says to indicate you've understood, showing concern for the situation they are currently in, not sympathy for what they may have done, and the skill of being silent at certain times, which I just tried and is very difficult. Found not to be effective in this study of overcoming denials were maximization, making things out to be more serious than they are, minimization, offering themes or excuses for why the person may have committed this bad behavior, intimidating the person, challenging their account in oppressive ways, interrupting the suspect, asking leading questions, suggesting what might have happened, and situational futility, which is, it's all up now, you might as well confess, there's no point in you continuing to deny. Now, some of these skills in red have been trained in a variety of countries, but our study found them to be counterproductive. You might think some of them are unethical. I'm not here to talk about that today. Very briefly, in another of our studies of real-life interviews, a large sample of suspects in serious cases where the interviewing with appropriate breaks lasted on average, I think, about 5 or 6 hours. And we did find some significant associations between interviewer skills and the suspects choosing to respond. Rapport and empathy, that's cognitive empathy, not affective empathy, is important. Again, open type questions are associated with the increased likelihood of suspects deciding to admit the offense, whereas the asking of what we call negative questions, this has been published, contact me if you want to know more about it, they were associated with a decreased likelihood. And in this substantial study, we also examined which strategies were associated with the interviewees continuing to respond relevantly. Now, you may know in real life interviews in serious cases, if you're skillful enough to encourage the suspect ethically to talk, many of them will talk, but not on what the interviewer wants to talk about. So it's a great skill to encourage the suspect to respond relevantly from the interviewer's point of view. And again, we found positive associations for the building and maintenance of rapport. Lawrence Allison's an expert on that, the use of cognitive empathy, skillfully and gradually presenting the evidence and behaving in a way that requests the attention of the suspect. But again, we found some negative associations for explicitly asking for an account. You've got to tell us the truth, emphasizing the seriousness of the offense. And again, situational futility came out as having a negative relationship. So in closing, I want to mention what it says in the recently publicized Universal Protocol on Effective Interviewing. It says it will typically involve the following: thorough preparation and planning, keeping an open mind, establishing and maintaining rapport, using scientifically supported questioning techniques, active listening, and enabling the interviewee to speak freely and completely, for example, not interrupting, and then skillfully contrasting what the interview says with what the interviewer already knows. And of course, after the interview, assessing the information gathered and the skills demonstrated. So I've quickly gone over some of the most important skills that research says are important. Thank you for your attention.